Hi everybody, it's Helen Chorley, co-founder of Property Sisters here. We're having a monthly catch-up, which we're going to be doing going forward with Jay and Piotr from Hammered. They're going to give us insights into what went on in the auctions kind of very recently, some really interesting stuff going on. And just before we crack on with them, if you could hit that subscribe button and the bell icon, then you'll be notified every time we upload a new video. And we're going to be uploading a lot more this year, so go ahead and do that. And then we'll hand over to Piotr and Jay. How are you chaps, and what's been going on?
Good, Helen. Thanks for asking. Yeah, we've been busy. We were looking at how the January auctions were starting, and January is a fairly poor month for auctions anyway. But there seems to be some movement. The February auctions, I know we're only very early on into February, but it seems to be some struggling. I think a lot of that is probably sentiment around, not really knowing a great deal about where the stamp duty holiday is going to go and at the end of March. So there's a bit of trepidation, but there's been some strong sales, and we're expecting some strong sales next week. Really, the auction calendar for February ends around the 18th, 19th. That's when all the big boys have gone. So we're going to have a far better idea as to how February is fared by the end of the month, but it's starting to look a little bit geographically wavy. But there are some auctioneers that just haven't really had any change. So it's a bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah, sounds very mixed. And as you say, the stamp duty and that looming cliff edge that we have is still there, albeit actually we did a live video on the stamp duty debate in Parliament on Monday. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there, whether it's extended, whether it's phased out. It has a huge effect, as we all know. So Piotr, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that stamp duty holiday, it's created sort of some extra auctions. There's a few different auction houses. They put in an extra auction on the beginning of March, so that kind of will coincide with the completion, will coincide with the deadlines, so that people can still benefit from it. So I guess there's increased activity from what we see. But this week we had auction, the also commercial auction, and that one, they only had 63 lots offered initially. There was about 12 withdrawn, and they sold 42 out of those. So about 60% of what they initially offered, and about 80% of what they offered actually on the day. But they only raised 30 million, which for also commercial is quite a low amount, especially for February, which is normally a very busy month. So that's the lowest amount since July 2008.
Oh, wow.
They've never raised, and they've never offered that like as little properties. Even last year they had an auction, an extra auction in June, which was in between May and July auction, and they offered more properties and they sold more stuff in that auction, even though there was an extra auction. So it's quite a surprising thing, but I think what we are seeing right now for commercial properties, that a lot of them struggle. A lot of them basically tenants might be in arrears, and sellers don't want to offer it while the properties are in such a kind of distressed state,
Right.
because that would affect the value of the property achieved in the auction. So as long as the sellers are not distressed, they don't really want to offer the properties right now. But we've seen really good sales yesterday. There was a lot of quality stock that was offered, like especially there was one seller that offered about 15 Santander banks across the UK, mostly southeast and south of England, and some of those sold for double the guide price, and those were usually freehold banks with 5-year leases to Santander, brand new leases or kind of extended leases, and some of those sold at about 3.5%, 4% yield, 5% yield. Those were really low numbers, like in terms of yield. Obviously, high prices, but all of those properties offered some form of potential in the future because they were let fully to one entity. That was interesting, and there were quite a few other sales that went for a lot of money. Rains Park property, ex Wetherspoon. Actually, Wetherspoon is still there, but they're terminating the lease at the end of the completion period, so it will be vacant. It was offered with a guide price of 500k. It sold for 900k, and that's a lot of money for an empty commercial restaurant, pub type of property. So some good sales, some bad sales, a mixed bag.
A real mixed bag, yeah, as you both say. So there's 65 lots, and compared to how many would there normally be? It seems like there was kind of less supply, but actually what sold really well.
Yeah, that's right. Normally they would offer about 100 to 150 lots.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of typical also commercial number.
Yeah, it's very strange for them on a commercial level. You know, on pre-COVID and pre-whatever is on the way, they'd be selling about 60 to 65 million pounds worth of property without really blinking. You know, so
actually we can share some stats with you if share the screen with you guys. Yay! So. The auction from yesterday, 53 lots offered, 42 sold, 30 million raised, and also the 80%. It's quite a low amount comparing to everything that was like all the previous sales.
Yeah.
So the last time that they raised 30 million pounds was, we have to go down to July 2008, 22 million, and that was basically the height of the credit crunch. So
we all remember 2008, don't we?
Yeah, bitterly. Yeah. But I mean, you could probably try and draw some kind of parallel and say, if they're back to those kind of figures, there's something going on. It's a rather mooted kind of data set, I would say, because you kind of have to measure it against the rest of the marketplace for auctions, and everyone else seems to be doing fairly decent numbers. I think that sale is probably going to be uncomfortable for all sorts, because February is your chance to set your stall out for the year. Like a good February sale will pull you through the spring, get you to summer. The idea is to get to summer and do a good sale in summer, try and get decent lots in for September, because that's when people are away and there's pressure and there's things like this to motivate the market forward. And then you kind of just need to settle down in December. December is the best time to buy for me, but February is where you set your stall. And I don't think they're going to feel like they set their stall when they look at the Barnard Marcus results, when they look at a couple of the other results. Obviously, you're comparing apples with oranges, because Barnard Marcus is 350 lots, theirs is 63. Barnard Marcus is majority land and residential, theirs was commercial. We're going to be seeing their residential auction on the 18th, which is a larger auction. And I think really that's going to set the tone. I think Piotr's comments on, how commercial's doing at the moment is really very important. A lot of people have gone a bit shy, but then you see the results with Santander, and you think, even on an asset management basis over 15 years net, I would not be looking at less than 4%. Maybe I'm a bit conservative, but if those Santanders were 15 years and it was only let to the ground floor and you had the uppers to do what you like, then I probably would pay that kind of money. But that wasn't the asset that was on offer. So it's a strange market, very much a mixed bag. And
just for viewers that aren't perhaps necessarily aware of that yield, can you just explain kind of the yield and why the higher the price, the lower the yield?
Yes. So go on, Piotr.
I'm the numbers person. I'm designated to talk about numbers. So basically, the yield is you get it by dividing the rent by the purchase price, and sometimes to get the net yield, you also have the stamp duty or the purchase cost. But in general, one of those pull out on the screen a lot number 1, just so that we kind of see it on the example. So this was Santander in Chingford. The rental income was 23.5k per annum for the whole thing. It sold for £561,000. So basically 23k, 23.5 divided by 561 is 4.19% gross, after taking into account stamp duty and transaction costs of 3.99. So this is basically, that's why the higher the purchase price, the lower the yield, because you're dividing by the purchase price. And also the higher the rents, then the higher would be the yield. So that's the idea behind it.
And what was the asking price on that one?
It was 350 to 375, and that was increased from the initial guide of 325 to 350.
Yeah.
So it was even increased before the actual the auction day. Wow.
Yes, yeah.
They were very confident.
Yeah,
well, it's a double-edged sword doing that. You know, if you've got a lot of interest, you know, sometimes up in the guide and reserve, you know, that puts people off. They're like, well, if you're going to do that, it's not really a fair fight. You know, you kind of have to let people decide the value by bidding, and some people just don't care. So, you know, when people put the price up before the auction, I don't bid. I think I'm a bit of a purist. I don't like it. But you know, it all comes down to how good the opportunity is, and at 3.99%, it doesn't seem like that much for a good opportunity. But maybe someone has a bigger plan. Maybe the same person bought all 15 is going to lump them and run asset management, in which case your internal rate of return may increase. You know, if you don't take into consideration too much on the yield. But very, very interesting result. We know a couple of people who were bidding for some of the Santanders, and they were blown out of the water fairly early on. And you know, they were buying on what we would consider fundamental values. But you can't account for things like that in this kind of market.
Well, that's been brilliant, guys. Thank you so much. Really great insight and great examples for us there. And I think the overall message is, as you both said, a proper mixed bag. So we'll stay tuned for the 18th. That's a Resi auction on the 18th, right?
Yeah.
And then we'll look forward to next month to hearing your thoughts again then. Thank you so much.
And thanks,
Thank you. Thanks, Helen.